Live from the Rant Radio Network, you're listening to Real Estate Rant with your host, Alex Alanis, and your co-host, Mr. Alonso Rodriguez. No problems, just solutions for real estate needs, hot topics, and controversial chat.
Do that now? Yeah, I love that bumper music. Always good. Thanks for tuning in. We're here at the Real Estate Rant and the Rant Radio Network, or usually the towers of the Rant Radio. We call it the Holy Ground.
The Holy Ground. That's what the last...
The Holy Ground of the Rant Radio Network here at the towers. And you know what city this is here, right, Pete? Joining us this morning, Mr. Peter Alianos from 247 Appraisal. Welcome, Mr. Pedro.
Hello.
Me and Pete, we've been good friends for a long time. Pete and I both discuss appraisal. I was an appraiser for 18 years, a review appraiser for 6 of those years. Mr. Pedro and I have had many discussions, and thought it would be good for the show to bring him on. Bring on our what'd you call it?
Pantalones.
Mr. Manny Pantalones, our engineer, will always bring on the
special
studio
effects.
the studio audience, right? Anyway, so Mr. Pedro, a good friend of mine, long time coming on the show. We talked about this a while ago about you coming on the show and us discussing appraisal. Usually when we get on the phone, we're on the phone for like 3 hours. Talking about one particular subject, something that frustrates us. But anyway, the design deal for the week, we'll bring that up first. Compliments of Carlos Cruz at the Bell Gardens Chamber of Commerce. Anybody that can get or take a look at the screen here, Pedro. Do you know what kind of house that is? Don't say it on the air. We're actually having people call in, and they can win a $25 gift card to Stevens Steakhouse, located in the City of Commerce, or they can win a $200 gift card to teeth whitening treatment at Garden Dental, located at 7218 Garfield Avenue in the City of Bell Gardens. And that's $200 value. So anybody that calls in and asks Pete a question and gets on the air or happens to know what design that is, they can win those prizes. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. So anyway, we will follow now with questions of the week. You can give us a call at 855-693-4897. That's 855-693-4897. Or you can email us at realestaterantradio@gmail.com. That's realestaterantradio@gmail.com. And Mr. Alonso gets those emails. Did we get any emails this time, Mr. Alonso?
Absolutely, we did. We got one coming in from Gustavo out of Ontario. It says, it's a closing question. So it says, my house recently went into escrow that was supposed to close the last 60 days. 1 week before the closing, we were notified by the real estate agent that the house did not appraise for the amount agreed upon the sale contract. The buyers are refusing to obtain another mortgage company or another appraisal at my cost. Do they forfeit their deposit? That is in escrow, or is that technically mine?
Was that the question, Alonso?
That's the question.
Move your mic this way a little bit, Alonso. I'm losing you a little bit. The question is, do they lose their deposit? Wow, there were so many mistakes that I'm seeing going on as a real estate agent that happened there. First of all, why are they just barely finding out that the appraisal didn't come in at value? That's typically within the first 17 days of a transaction. As the contract reads, the appraisal contingency 17 days. If they're saying that they're just finding out 10 days before, somebody is not communicating that information.
That's absolutely right. That's probably not the true question. That's probably not the right answer why they're cancellation. So I think you need to do a little further investigation of why it canceled.
Yeah, because I'm thinking that the appraisal contingency should have been addressed earlier on in the transaction. And did I hear you right? It said 60 days. There were 60 days.
60 days, 1 week before they were notified.
There were some serious problems with that transaction. Now, let's just do damage control, okay? The appraisal didn't come in. The buyer has 3 options. Now, that's only if they extended the appraisal contingency. So that's an important point. They can renegotiate the price. They can go along with what the appraisal says, or they can cancel the deal. But what that means is that the buyer would get their deposit back if they cancel. Now, again, that all rides on the fact that's if they extended the appraisal contingency. So if the appraisal contingency wasn't addressed and the appraisal came in low, and they didn't remove the contingency, well, technically it's still under the appraisal contingency.
And not only
and or loan contingency.
But not only that, Alex, is that the escrow just cannot hand back that money back. So it's gonna be, you have to have permission from both parties. I'm not if I'm buying the property, I'm not gonna want to lose my
Well,
deposit.
there's a loophole in that actually, Alonso. If both parties didn't sign the escrow instructions, the escrow cannot hold that money. That's a little loophole. Maybe I shouldn't have said that on the air, but the fact of the matter is, because I play that little trick with my clients. There was a situation one time when I sold the property, and I thought I was going to get this $10,000 deposit check, but the buyer didn't sign the escrow instructions. The escrow company couldn't hold it. Now, does that mean that the seller wasn't liable? No, they were, but now I had to take them to court to get it. And who does that? Not too many people do that. I mean, have you ever experienced that, Pete?
One time I was trying to buy a property, and it's a funny story. Well, it's not funny, but the seller was an elderly person. I made the offer on a Friday. Monday, I got news that he passed away over the weekend.
Oh, you're kidding me. But they dealing with an agent?
They were dealing with an agent.
Oh, wow.
Well, what happened, I ended up not being able to qualify for the property. They ended up holding my deposit for at least 6 more weeks until they got another offer on the property.
And they gave it back to you?
They gave it back to me.
Okay,
yeah.
So did you sign the escrow instructions? Was that something that happened?
That's a good question. It was so long ago, I don't remember. I'm guessing that I did. I'm going to say yes.
You don't look that old,
I did.
Pete.
5 or 6 years ago, come on. Lots happened since then.
No, you're kidding. You're not kidding. 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, a matter of fact, I was thinking about this morning, Pedro. I keep calling you Pedro.
It's all right.
Yeah, well, that's
it's your show.
That's my pet name for Pete. Me and Pete have been friends for a while.
Pet names.
But
nice.
I was thinking.
Let's get one for Alonzo too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we have one, but we can't say that. We can't say that one on the air. Yeah, exactly. But I was thinking about this morning as I was driving over to the show. I was thinking, wow, you know what? How long have I known Pete? And I couldn't think about it. When did you do that appraisal on? And actually, that's where we met. You did an appraisal on one of my investment properties.
Right.
But we met about maybe 10 years ago? Was that does that sound right to you?
No, it wasn't 10.
Because you were still living out by the ocean back then.
Yeah, I think it was maybe 6 years ago now.
Was it 6? Okay.
Yeah, 6.
Because I'll tell you what, Pete, it sounds a lot. It feels a lot longer than that. It feels like we've known each other for a lot longer. So
can we get an there, engineer, like one of those?
Oh, there we go. Arvin's usually on his game with some of that stuff. Yeah. But this is why it's a pleasure to have you on the show, Pete, because Pete and I have had many opportunities to sit and talk about appraisal. That is my forte and my...
I haven't seen one female since we got here. This place is a sausage fest.
And thanks for that, Mr. Manny. Yeah, I lost my train of thought. We were talking about the opportunities that we had sitting down at different restaurants and enjoying your company, talking about appraisal. It was always a pleasure to discuss these things and a lot of the things that have happened over that period of time. There's a lot of funny stories, right? But this is why I wanted to thank you again for saving us today. We actually had a cancellation. We were supposed to have a title company on, and for some reason, I've already tried 3 title companies, and every single one is canceled on me for different reasons. But what it seems like is their legal departments are not allowing them to join the show or to be on the show. I don't know why that is.
Talking about legal department, let's just give out that disclosure out there that if you're calling in your questions, seeking legal advice, we are not lawyers, so you got to obtain that information from a qualified source.
Or an accountant, right? We're not attorneys or accountants, and so...
They're just simple opinions.
Yeah. So
exactly.
This is uncensored radio here at the towers of the Rant Radio Network, and so we definitely try not to cover any of those things. Pete, let me ask you a question. How did you get into appraisal? What fascinated you about the industry?
That's a good question. Well, I was bartending at the time in the real estate market. This is when it was just blowing up.
Early 90s?
Early 2000s.
2000?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a regular used to come in the bar. He worked across the street at a retail place. And make a long story short, he got into appraising. And he would still stop and come in the bar. And I was ready to either get into loans because one of my colleagues, one of the bartenders I worked with, was doing loans. And what it came down to was if I went to school, I bought a couple properties and I used this individual to appraise my properties. And he told me if I took my classes, passed the state exam, they would bring me aboard. So
So
I
this,
did
this
that.
is just a customer that, that you
Well,
were
it's
serving?
yeah, but he'd been around for a couple years. I mean, you know, I'd known him. I've worked at the place for 6 years.
I see.
So we
and
got to
actually,
know each other.
that's one of the hardest things back then. What you needed was that internship with somebody, because a lot of appraisers, I recall, because I myself took classes for all the classes that you need to qualify for the appraisal, license. The only thing was that to get that internship, a lot of the appraisers will see you as a threat. So that was probably the hardest
Right.
thing to.
Well, yeah, they're training their
to do.
competition. You know?
Exactly. So that was a kind of issue that I was having back then, because I was actually offered by a good friend of mine who did loans. You know what? Get your appraisal license. So I took all the classes. When it came to the point of getting the internship, it was through the guy that was giving us we're taking him all our appraisals. So he seen it as a threat, and he didn't want to, do that internship.
Right.
So I think you were fortunate for him to take you under his wing and give you that internship.
No, definitely.
Yeah, and I know you guys were just introduced to be a broker, because Alonso's a broker. To be a broker,
Right.
you need all that training.
Yes, you do.
And brokers have to learn all that stuff. So that's all good information. So, but Pete, you're also you're from Chicago, right?
Yes.
Originally. So is
South
that
side.
Did you? Oh, okay. I don't know what that
I
means.
don't know if I should brag about that, but
I don't know what that means. What does that mean? The South Side.
it's just you got this north side, south side. New
means-
York. It's
Well, I know when you talk about
I
South
think
Whittier.
I think it means he's affiliated with Capone or one of them.
Oh,
I'm a
okay.
White Sox fan, I guess.
okay.
Okay. Well, so we're wearing our colors
I don't
this
hate
morning.
on the Cubs. Yeah, exactly. Colors.
I'm not sure what that means exactly, but is that where you started doing appraisal?
No, I started out here in Southern California.
Oh, so it's when you made the trip out to Southern California
Right.
is when you now in our conversations you mentioned that one of the reasons why you were interested in the whole real estate thing is because you want to be an investor as well.
Exactly.
Okay,
And
so-
I thought appraising, it gave you better insight.
Well,
into
you know
that.
what you're
And-
getting into. You know actually the reality of it, because like I said, there's a lot of investors out there who think it's a hell of a deal, and when you start doing the numbers, it's really not that.
Right.
It's really not that of a deal.
And that's what it boils down to, really.
Well, I think
that's-
appraising takes out the emotion. You look at the numbers.
We'll be right back.
Okay.
Don't touch that mouse.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with some more real estate rant.
Oh, man. TheTicketSurgeon.com. Reach us at 855-WIN-4199.
Did you get caught speeding, texting while driving, or doing anything else you weren't supposed to do?
Give us a call. Don't miss work. Don't lose out on the money. Don't get any more points. What about your insurance? Let us fight for you. TheTicketSurgeon.com at 855-WIN-4199.
Are you watching the game at home? Why? Come watch it at Mambo Grill, the hottest spot in Downey. You'll have good food, drinks, and a great time at a low price. We have the coldest beer in our sports bar, where you can enjoy the game on any of our huge flat screen TVs. And when your home team wins, you get 25% off anything in Mambo Grill. We're on Downey Avenue, 1 block north of Firestone, or visit us on the web. Mambo Grill, love at first bite.
What up, foodie freaks? It's Chef Bev Lazo with the Culinary Trend Show. Join me and my brigade every Thursday night from 8 to 9 p.m. where we will be cooking up some crazy stuff that will give you the appetite for discussion. It's all about the good food, good friends, and good times. Only here on RantRadioNetwork.com.
We are the Three Guys Rant.
with Arvin, Mike, and Phil.
Coming to you on the Rant Radio Network every Monday from 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can call us at 855-69 The Three Guys.
It's not the three guys. This is why you should turn in, because one has Tourette's. The other one's illiterate.
You really should listen in. You never know what's going to happen.
855-69 guys. G-U-Y-S and the number 3, not the.
Faces for radio, voices for the deaf.
Look forward to talking to you.
Hey, I'm audio candy. I don't know about you guys.
Hi, I'm Aaron Michael Sanchez.
And I'm Kelly V. Dolan.
And we are excited to announce our show Live with Aaron and Kelly is on Rant Radio Network. What do we talk about on our show, Kelly?
We talk about everything from entertainment to business and tech, and we have a few laughs in between.
That's right. Go check us out on RantRadioNetwork.com. That's RantRadioNetwork.com.
Check it out.
Live from the Rant Radio Network,
You're listening to Real Estate Rant with your host, Alex Alanis.
and your co-host, Mr. Alonso Rodriguez.
No problems, just solutions for real estate needs, hot topics, and controversial chat. And we're back with Mr. Peter Alianos from 247 Appraisal. Thanks for joining us. You can reach us at 855-693-48. I'm sorry. What did you say, Pedro?
24/7 appraisals.
What did I say?
247.
Oh, okay. I apologize. You know what? I'm saying the same thing, but that's how you would prefer it.
That's the
24/7 appraisal.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, it's funny that you say that. Just let me put the number out here real quick. 855-693-4897. That's 855-693-4897. You can win a $25 gift card to Stevens Steakhouse or a $200 teeth whitening at Gardens Dental. Or you can email us at realestaterantradio@gmail.com. We won't get to your emails here on the show, but after the show for next week's, we'll definitely bring it on as our frequently asked questions for the show. Somebody had brought up, because my new email address is 257, and I kind of make the joke now because 24/7 appraisal, it means 24 hours a day,
yeah.
7 days a week.
Right.
Well, I said, well, I'm trying to beat out a friend of mine where I'm doing 25/7, right? That was a little joke that went out about it. Back to appraisal.
Yes.
Pete's here joining us, talking all about appraisal industry and how he got into the industry, and we talked a little bit about what the South Side is in Chicago. We were trying to figure that out, and Pete's been a little withholding with us. So we talked about how you got into appraisal. So you met some guy.
I'll give a shout out to Jed Wilczek.
Was that his name?
Yeah, that's the name, Jed Wilczek.
Is that him?
Yeah.
Okay. So what kind of, once you got into appraisal, what was involved in now getting into the industry? What did you have to do?
Well, you have to train. So you have to shadow someone, and you're literally just following someone. They're measuring the house, taking notes. It's nothing exciting. It's really tedious, boring work for a lot of people. But that's how you got to do it, because it's a very detail-oriented job.
And not to mention all the classes you have to take beforehand before you actually have to go on the field with the person, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I've seen here on the website there's a lot of hours of training that you need, and a lot of appraisal principles.
Alonzo, that's actually gone up
procedures.
since I got into it too. It's changed. Yeah,
well, nowadays there's a lot of tedious hours of book knowledge that you have to put into it, or schooling.
Yeah, the classroom time when I was and this was back in the early '90s when I was getting my appraisal. I think it was 100 hours. Now I think it's 250, something like that. I'm not sure about that.
You can refer to a website and go and check actually how many hours are, but it is a long process. Not only to mention that you got to do the background check, the live scan,
right? All that. Oh, and now they're changing it, because right now to be a certified general you need to have a bachelor's degree, an associate's to be a certified residential.
Yeah, that's pretty. That wasn't nowhere near
right.
that before.
2015. Now they're going to raise the bar to now you need to have a bachelor's to be certified, residential and general. Yes.
I have actually been talking with a few appraisers, and they're telling me that it's a bad industry to get into now.
I don't think. You know what? I'm happy doing it. I like it. This is interesting. Our numbers have gone down about over 50%. Last time I checked, there was about, I think, now it's the Bureau, BREA, Bureau of Real Estate Appraisers. Yes. It used to be OREA. You can go to the website, and it says, I forgot the link on there, but it shows how many people are currently licensed in the state. And we're at 11,968 last time I checked.
And what do you think that is, Pete?
Well, a couple things. At the peak, let me give you our peak numbers. December 2007, we had 24,127, I believe. So we're over 50% have left. Now, I guess...
So you're talking about active appraisers.
Yeah, active licensed appraisers in the state. So I think, I forgot what the numbers are, but the majority of appraisers are 50 and up, 50 to 80 in age. And I think that's like 70%. So there's a lot of people who are just older than maybe they had retired. The HVCC knocked a lot of people out. And then, of course, as you guys know, in the real estate industry, when it was booming, everyone was jumping in. There was so many agents, people, being a broker is probably more difficult, but a lot of people... I actually had someone told me, don't be an appraiser. Go straight for your broker's license, because that's where the money's at. And I'm thinking, how do you get business as a broker? Just go straight to it. I mean, you usually have to build up the process,
Yeah,
right?
you have to build up the clientele and what have you. But now you mentioned HVCC. What is that stand
It's the
for?
Home Valuation Code of Conduct.
Home Valuation Code of Conduct. And Alonso and I and Pete actually were just talking about this because Alonso had a different view on something that he read on the internet. What was that?
Well,
Alonso?
it's just some clarity that we're not really sure of what's the reality. And there's a website that I go to and I try to get information to cross-reference different opinions. And one of them being is that, it says that real estate agents aren't allowed to talk to the appraisal. And, and like you had mentioned earlier, that maybe that, that's one of the appraiser would say that so that, not to get into that, how can I say it?
Well, they use it as an excuse.
Into that dilemma. But actually, I read on another website that we are allowed to talk to an appraiser as long as we're not influencing the price or we want to have anything to do with that, because it's actual factual information that will justify the price coming in the appraisal. But like I said, it's just an opinion. We're not allowed to kind of, like before, I remember I would tell an appraiser, I need this value to come in. And they would, if they wanted the business, that value better came in.
Well, who doesn't want the value to come in, right?
And that's what I think. That's what I think. A lot of appraisers went out of business also, was because they actually had their niche people or their niche clientele that would actually feed them appraisals. And once the HVCC came in, that changed the game. And according, that's another myth. Another myth that I read was that being that how it's outsourced, and it comes in through that you are, as an appraiser, you're getting you're on a rotation.
Right.
Who gets the is that a true or?
I really can't answer that because I don't work in a management company. But yeah, there is something like that. You are in a rotation.
Well, that was one of the things that I read, that actually that it's not mandatory, or you're not on a rotation, that the appraisal should go to the appraiser who really has a knowledge of that area, so we can get an actual real true value of the property. And that's where I think
I can help answer that too.
And well, that's where I think, Alex, that we're having a lot of problems, is that with this HVCC, with our values coming in, they give it to an appraiser who is not really familiarized with the area, and our appraisers come into, they're not coming in, or they weren't at a time.
That doesn't necessarily happen, but let's get a little bit of history here first. Influencing appraisers is something that since the spawning of appraisal even reared its ugly head to the whole real estate industry. since it reared its ugly head, there's always been individuals that were interested in the transaction trying to influence the appraiser to either bring it in low or bring it in high, whatever happens to be their situation. If they're getting divorced, they wanted to come in low. If it's an investment property, they wanted to come in high.
Or a short sale if they want to list.
So this is an age-old problem that appraisers have had since the beginning. And how does the industry combat it? Well, because of the mortgage meltdown, the Home Value Code of Conduct was introduced, and it spawned this whole new system of appraisal management companies. And for the listeners, if you don't understand what that is, these management companies, they're not really regulated. As a matter of fact, Pete and I have talked about this a little bit, where, okay, what do you need to be an appraisal management company? Well, there's not much. I mean, other than just maybe incorporating or putting together an entity, there's really not a criteria that the appraisal management companies need to run their company. And what do? They get appraisers on their roster, and then to avoid that contact with the appraiser, the lenders and or whoever's ordering an appraisal will order it from the appraisal management company, which will then order it from an appraiser. Now, you mentioned about an appraiser that is not familiar with the area. Well, obviously, one of the obligations and or responsibilities of an appraisal management company is to pick an appraiser that is familiar with that area. So I don't necessarily disagree, because it could happen, okay? But I will say that I would guess that the appraisal management companies are looking out for that, because they don't want to be accused of ordering an appraisal on a property or putting an appraiser in a position where they don't really realize what the area is or recognize the area or are knowledgeable in the area, which is actually part of the appraiser certification. The appraiser certifies that they're knowledgeable in that particular area. Exactly. Okay, so anyway, thank you again, Manny, for that. I really enjoyed those sound effects.
Do that.
So is this the joke part of the show? Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
You're talking about people knowing the area, but before the HVCC, if you were a loan officer and you call up me, or even when Al was doing appraisals, let's say you had a property down in San Diego, you would have your appraiser go out to San Diego from Whittier or LA or Orange County to appraise a property. It didn't matter before the HVCC if you were out of area, because as long as the value was going to come in, you would send the appraiser. So how does that change after the HVCC? Because you get someone else from a different area. Well, it didn't matter before, but now the value's not coming in.
Well, I think the reality is that the appraiser just needs to be a really good detective, more sense, because everything's on paper and everything is you can acquire it. That information's on the internet or through the different associations they belong to.
I agree. You should have access to data for that area. If you don't, I mean, for me, I won't do an appraisal in an area I don't have MLS for.
Well,
I'll turn it down.
I used to do review, and I used to review in all 50 states, and I had the information. There was 7 interfaces to MLS, and once you recognize all 7, just depending on the board that you were logging onto, like say Utah, right? It would be Rapatoni, right? And we're not familiar with Rapatoni here in Southern California. We're familiar with Tempo or Matrix, right? And so could I do research in another state that I've never even visited before? And the answer would be yes, I could do that. Now, could I do an appraisal? Probably not, because I have to physically inspect the property, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next segment, because we are coming. Bazinga! And so anyway, concerning the HVCC, coming from now a veteran position of being an appraiser for 18 years, I really enjoyed watching that code of conduct come across, because there was a lot of situations where an agent or somebody interested in the transaction would try to bribe me, $100, $200 to try to get me to push the value. And we'll talk a little bit more about that after the break. I just wanted to mention again, give us a call, 855-693-4897.
Let's pay those bills.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with some more real estate rant.
Looking for a delicious, fresh family meal that's ready when you are and easy on your budget? Welcome to Piara Pizza. We make our pizzas with handmade dough, 100% real cheese, and tomato sauce blended with our own spices. Nothing is ever frozen. We always have large pepperoni and cheese pizzas fresh and waiting for you for only $5. Or choose one of our specialty pizzas. We have veggie, meat lovers, supreme, and Hawaiian. Add an order of our amazing hot wings, cheesy bread, or breadsticks. Our locations are ultra-modern, ultra-clean, and open 7 days a week. Visit any one of our locations today, or check us out on the web at www.piarapizza.com. Piara Pizza. Fresh, hot, and ready for you when you come in. Stop in for your Piara Pizza today.
The experts know that for pastry, Baker's Bodega has it all. Exclusive brands like Westco Bankmark, Satin Ice, and Pastry Pride. One-on-one day seminars for cake decorating and gelatin art. So for our service, wide range of ingredients and supplies, and for the low prices, Baker's Bodega has it all. But you don't need to be an expert. Baker's Bodega, 7869 Paramount Boulevard in Pico Rivera. Come, we're waiting for you.
We are the Three Guys Rant with Arvin, Mike, and Phil.
Coming to you on the Rant Radio Network every Monday from 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can call us at 855-69-THE-3-GUYS.
It's not the 3 guys. This is why you should turn in, because one has Tourette's. The other one's illiterate.
You really should listen in. You never know what's going to happen.
855-69-3-GUYS. G-U-Y-S and the number 3, not the.
Faces for radio, voices for the deaf.
Look forward to talking to you.
Hey, I'm audio candy. I don't know about you guys.
Welcome to the Monster Marketing Group, your one-stop shop for all your marketing needs. Anything you need to make that marketing and advertising campaign stand out, we're your people. Concepts, design, production, social media, anything that you can dream up, we're going to make happen for you. And we can do it in a very quick turnaround. Please give us a call at 888-49-MONSTER.
Live from the Rant Radio Network,
You're listening to Real Estate Rant with your host, Alex Alanis,
and your co-host, Mr. Alonso Rodriguez.
No problems, just solutions for real estate needs, hot topics, and controversial chat. Hello there. You know what I didn't mention this morning is who we are. That was one of the broadcasting schools that we went to. They said, "Oh, you got to make sure that you say who you are and what you're doing," right? So we're here at the Real Estate Rant Radio at the towers of the Rant Radio Network. I'm your host, Mr. Alex Alanis, and to my left here, my broker
and co-host, Mr.
Well, I like to call him a host too.
Well, when you're in a good on a good one, you'll call me a co-host. You'll call me a host.
Yeah.
A co-host.
But then on a bad one? No.
A co-host.
Just a co-host. Mr. Alonso Rodriguez.
And you're getting better at rolling those R's, Alex. Just let me
that always seems to be part of the
stress
show.
That.
the Rodriguez part. Give us a call, 855-693-4897. That's 855-693-4897. And I didn't hear what did that say?
Are you sexy naked?
Am I sexy naked?
Are you sexy naked?
That's
I'm not figuring that out. You can email us as well as realestaterantradio@gmail.com. That's realestaterantradio@gmail.com. We'll put your question on the air. You can also win a $25 gift card. Stevens Steakhouse, located in the City of Commerce, compliments Carlos Cruz and the Bell Gardens Chamber of Commerce, or a $200 teeth whitening with Gardens Dental, located at 72.
Good news, everyone!
And very good news, 7218 Garfield Avenue in the City of Bell Gardens. And that's if you call in and talk to Mr. Peter Alayanos with the 24/7 appraisal. Did I get that right?
You got it right.
And if you get on the air, you can win one of those gift cards. Actually, we have his information up on the screen here. You can contact him at 949-981-2310, or you can email him at 247apps@sbcglobal.net. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, right on. And I did put up Pete's license there just for legal purposes, that he is a licensed appraiser, certified, and has the California seal of approval. Before the break, we were talking about
HVCC compliant.
Well, I actually mentioned about getting bribed out on the field. I would have these individuals come, hey, can you push this value $20,000 on a property? And they would offer me a couple $100 to do that. And I was like, well, let me understand something here. Let me get this straight. And I'm not trying to insult the individual, but I'm trying to understand what they're saying. So you want me to push the value $20,000 and you're offering me $200. The way that I see it is, and this is how I would get them to stop doing what they're doing. The way that I'm looking at it is, if you're making an additional $20,000, that makes us partners. So guess what? I want 50% of that push, because it's my license on the line. It's my license on the line. You have no potential of losing anything. Actually, you're talking about making an additional $20,000. So why don't you give me 10,000 of that 20 once we close the deal, and you got a deal. You're making an extra 10 grand on the deal. What's wrong with that? You know what they would say? Oh no, never mind. That would always be the situation.
That's just greed, isn't it? They want to split that.
Well, these, I'll tell you, and Pete, I know you're an investor. I'm not trying to.
I'm being facetious.
Facetious. I'm not trying to insult you in any way, because I know you invest in properties, but I would get these individuals doing this to me on a constant basis. I mean, at the time, I was doing probably 3 a day. I was doing 3 appraisals a day, and I was just running myself ragged.
And I think that's one of the primary reasons why the HVCC compliant program came into effect, because of that, situations of that happening.
Yeah,
and
that's the
only way that Freddie and Fannie were able to try and keep an arm's length from a bit. I mean, it still happens. I believe it still happens in the industry, not as often, but it's probably not as discreet, may I say?
Well, the loan industry did not want this to pass. They did not want the HVCC to pass. You know why? Because if appraisers are pushing values, that means more money borrowed. They did not want this to pass by any means.
Really quick, I believe the history was Andrew Cuomo, who's now the governor of New York. He was the attorney general at the time. He was going
absolutely
to
right.
sue Fannie and Freddie. I don't know all the details of everything. And there's a company called, was it E-Appraise It? I don't remember. I spoke to a lady that worked with it.
E-Appraisal.
Was that, okay.
I think that's what it was.
She told me a lot of things what had come up, what they found wrong. A lot of stuff came up in underwriting, but they still wanted to put this through. They wanted to put this in effect, which in a lot of ways at the time, a lot of people were angry because they had clients for 15, 20 years or what have you. But in a lot of ways, it ended up, for me, I think it ended up being the right move.
Yeah,
you just had to stick it out for a while, though.
You're happy with the change. Now, at the break, we were talking a little bit about now having the change of the HVCC or Home Valley Code of Conduct take effect. It spawned the introduction of appraisal management companies. But then what happened to the fees?
Fees, people were getting paid maybe 30% of
You're
what they were making
you're
before.
talking about appraisers.
Appraisers were making 30% of what they were making before. Which
30%.
To go back to what you were saying, having people from out of area. Before it didn't matter. What I think was going on was that people were getting paid so little, you got what you paid for with the appraisal.
Yeah, let me just go back and recap a little bit of what you were talking about, because I did write about that. It says the HVCC is a set of guidelines to curb inaccurate appraisals developed by New York Attorney General Andrew Cuomo and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, regulatory of the Federal Housing Financing Agency. In general, the guidelines seek to ensure an arm's length relationship between the lender making the loan and the appraiser in which appraiser's misconduct is suspected. So that's what I kind of got in a nutshell.
Yeah, so I mean, we're always talking about, especially in appraisal, and this is actually the motto of the show, is to ensure the public trust. So how do you in the appraisal industry ensure the public trust? You know, the general consensus was back when I was doing appraisals is, you know, I know you guys, we just tell you what kind of value we want it to come in at, and you guys can bring it in. You know, it's really not like that anymore. You know, the appraisers are not influenced the same way. So it's an attempt at ensuring the public trust in terms of that legal separation now between the loan officer, the brokers involved, and I know that there's some counterpoint that Alonso was bringing up earlier today about that communication with the appraiser, right? The appraiser can't, you know, the general consensus is appraisers are not supposed to be talking with agents and brokers, but that's not necessarily true. They can communicate. It's just the to get information and do research, not to influence the appraiser.
Right. You cannot discuss value with anyone except the client, which is the AMC or whoever orders the appraisal.
So not even the client, meaning the loan officer.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so I think what it's trying to avoid, Alex, I mean, you've been in the industry for as long as I have, and I mean, the reality of the way we were doing business back then with the appraisers is we pretty much had them, you know, at our disposal, you know. And if the value wasn't coming in, then guess what? They weren't getting another appraisal from me. So I think that's one of the primary reasons this is it's a good change. It's a good change, and it keeps us, you know, more honest, you know, and that's what we try to promote on this show, is to ensure that the public trust. How can we do it? By actually selling the property at what it's worth, not trying to push it or trying to lower the value. And that goes back to code of ethics, and we can spend a whole show on that. But I mean, we're trying to we try to show the audience of what really goes on behind the scenes in reality, in what it happens, you know, things that happens in our industry.
Yeah, which actually brings me, Pete, to what an appraiser does. You know, one of the things that I always had problems with, especially when I'm talking with folks out in the field, is that there's a big misconception as to what an appraiser does and what an inspector does, and that's mainly because they use the same word, appraisal inspection, and then home inspection. A lot of people confuse the two. What does an appraiser do when they're inspecting the property? What are they looking for?
Well, first we measure the house. We take photos. We measure the house. You do that. Well, first we even go there just to see if the property even exists, right?
Yeah, we've seen problems of facades or fraud.
Actually,
right?
I remember you told me about that, and I think I heard that before too, where people were just taking photos and just putting them in reports. Anyways, you go to the home, you measure it, and depending on what it is, like FHA, they want attic, crawl space, sides, water heater, and now you have carbon monoxide detectors too. That's a new thing. But now it seems like everyone's kind of coming up to that FHA standard for like it's almost like even conventional loans want that level of inspection.
So one of the reasons you said it was size. You measure the property.
Measure the property,
and then
you want to see what's
one,
on public records. Because some people do, as you guys know, people do weird things to their homes, and they think it adds value. I converted my garage. We did this. It's like, okay,
we enclose the patio.
Yeah, exactly.
You measure. I can imagine an appraiser going to a home and where they enclose the patio and your measurements are not coming to par of what what's on record.
Right.
Would you guys go out and look at permits or anything?
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay, so that's another thing. If your measurements aren't corresponding to what's on record, then right away it triggers a problem.
You have to check zoning on that too. I just had to do that recently, where a property was coming up as a duplex, and it was in a residential area. So it was what happened. It was just grandfathered in wrong, but yeah, you do. And the thing is, people will tell you, yeah, the enclosed patio is permitted, and it's like, okay, but it's not a family room. It's a patio, so that's all I give it value for. And yeah, that's
Well, a property, when you add an enclosed patio in the back, in order to include it in the size of the home, it has to be habitable living space, and there's certain criteria that requires that. It has to be heated, has to be floored, has to be finished, and it has to be the same as the original structure, same quality of the home.
Right.
So an enclosed patio is not included in the living space of an area. And so you talked about size, you talked about it physically existing.
Right.
And then
you want to see the layout like that. Like, for instance, older homes, sometimes you go through one bedroom and get into another.
Newer homes, tandem bedroom.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that's because, they didn't have as much closet space back then. They were the standards were different. So, I mean, you want to check just the layout, the design of the house.
So the functional layout and design of the property
right.
also could affect the value, and this is the reason why an appraiser goes out to a property.
Exactly.
Okay. And then you mentioned a little bit about FHA standards, and I've always known FHA to be interested a little bit more about condition, health, and safety. So that's another reason why an appraiser goes out to a property.
That's true. That's a good point. I mean, one time I appraised a home that was hoarders lived in it. And
I've seen a lot of those.
You can't get a loan because it's a health and safety issue. It is a fire trap. Or you've heard stories where things just fall, a person sleeping, a bunch of things just fall on top of them, they can't get out.
So back then I would tell my appraiser, just take a picture where there's no trash.
Well, I've seen houses where they just have a little trail coming from the front door to get to the rooms. It's crazy.
Right. No, the one home I did actually did catch fire, and you got to go. Anyways, they were still living in there.
Don't touch that mouse. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with some more Real Estate Rant.
Ticketsurgeon.com. Reach us at 855-WIN-4-199.
Did you get caught speeding, texting while driving, or doing anything else you weren't supposed to do?
Give us a call. Don't miss work. Don't lose out on the money. Don't get any more points. What about your insurance? Let us fight for you. Ticketsurgeon.com at 855-WIN-4-199.
Welcome to Monster Marketing Group, your one-stop shop for all your marketing needs. Anything you need to make that marketing and advertising campaign stand out, we're your people. Concepts, design, production, social media, anything that you can dream up, we're going to make happen for you. And we can do it in a very quick turnaround. Please give us a call at 888-49-MONSTER.
What up, foodie freaks? It's Chef Bev Lazo with the Culinary Trend Show. Join me and my brigade every Thursday night from 8 to 9 p.m. where we will be cooking up some crazy stuff that will give you the appetite for discussion. It's all about the good food, good friends, and good times. Only here on RantRadioNetwork.com.
We are the Three Guys Rant with Arvin, Mike, and Phil.
Coming to you on the Rant Radio Network every Monday from 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can call us at 855-69-THE-3-GUYS.
It's not the three guys. This is why you should turn in, because one has Tourette's. The other one's illiterate.
You really should listen, then you never know what's going to happen.
855-69-3-GUYS. G-U-Y-S and the number 3, not the.
Faces for radio, voices for the deaf.
Look forward to talking to you.
Hey, I'm audio candy. I don't know about you guys.
Are you watching the game at home? Why? Come watch it at Mambo Grill, the hottest spot in Downey. You'll have good food, drinks, and a great time at a low price. We have the coldest beer in our sports bar, where you can enjoy the game on any of our huge flat screen TVs. And when your home team wins, you get 25% off anything in Mambo Grill. We're on Downey Avenue, 1 block north of Firestone, or visit us on the web. Mambo Grill, love at first bite.
Live from the Rant Radio Network,
You're listening to Real Estate Rant with your host, Alex Alanis,
and your co-host, Mr. Alonso Rodriguez.
No problems, just solutions for real estate needs, hot topics, and controversial chat. Welcome back to Real Estate Rant Radio here at the Rant Radio Network. I'm your host, Mr. Alex Alanis, and to my left here, my broker, Mr. Alonso Rodriguez. Joining us in studio today, Mr. Peter Alianos from 24/7 Appraisal.
That's right.
You can reach him at 949-981-2310 if you should have any questions for him. You can also call in at 855-693-4897, or you can email Mr. Peter at 247-APPS@sbcglobal.net. 247-APPS@sbcglobal.net. Now, you can't influence Mr. Peter, but you can talk with him. And some of the things we've been talking about.
Moving along with our outline, a few words about USPAP. Can you?
Oh, hey, wait, really quick, not to interrupt, but the HVCC per Dodd-Frank, the HVCC has been removed. The name is no longer current, but they kept everything in place. By the way, so the HVCC technically does not exist.
You're talking about in terms of a bureau or agency?
Well, just the term HVCC, they removed it. They said they were going to remove it, and everyone was getting excited, like, oh, cool, they're going to remove it, and we're going to go back to the way things were.
So I learned two things today. You talked about the Bureau of Real Estate Appraisers versus the Office of Real Estate Appraisers.
We work for a bureau now.
And now, yeah,
it's
nice. Well, it sounds like governmental.
Certainly what they did with the DRE,
same thing, right.
The same thing. Now it's BRE.
Is it really? It's Bureau of Real Estate now?
Yeah.
You're kidding me.
Yeah.
See, this is all news to me. I have no idea. So this is actually good information for the listeners.
Well, actually, when you put on your licensing now, you have to put BRE. Instead of DRE, it's BRE.
Well, I'm going to have to change all my signatures now. But we were talking a little bit about, in previous shows, we had talked about all of the free websites that are out there. I'll mention some names. Redfin, Zillow, Trillia, Realtor.com, Homes.com. The list goes on, where these websites, which are ultimately just brokerages, they take the information that we as agents put out there, and they sell it back to the agents. And the way they do that is they allow these agents to put up an advertisement on their websites, like if they were the agents listing those properties. On all of these websites, they have what's called an AVM, or an automated value model. And it gives a value of a property that you might be prospecting, say, when you're looking on those websites. And I've always kind of been against that. It's an algorithm based on statistics. So when we're talking about appraising property, you're talking about pinpointing a value versus an algorithm or computer that's putting out a value on these properties. What are your thoughts on that, Pete? I mean, I see that as being kind of bastardizing what we do as appraisers.
Well, those websites you mentioned, to me, they're not data sources. They're just money-making websites. People created them.
Absolutely.
So people go there, and that's what they base their data on. So that's really what I tell people. I agree with what you're saying. I mean, what we do, we go in the home, we check the condition of the house, like we were just talking about. What do we do? And also too, like we look for the home is situated on the lot, which we did not talk about.
Okay. Well, that was orientation.
Yeah, orientation.
Right? That was the fifth thing. This is the reason why an appraiser goes out to a property. Is you're checking the orientation of where that property sits on a lot.
But with an AVM, like you said, you're just looking at statistics. I mean, that's really taking out even more emotion, because you don't even have a person going there and seeing the condition of the home. And basically with an AVM, for a while, we were worried that those were going to take over the industry. It looked that way. And real estate agents had the same thing, because when the market was going up, people were putting just for sale by owner signs on the house and the home itself. No problem. You did not need an agent at that time. So everyone's thinking in 10 or 15 years, there may be no real estate agents, no more appraisers,
I've been hearing that my entire career.
Then the market crashed. Now we need agents, because you guys got you guys have a network of people to communicate with to sell a property. And then, of course, with appraisers, in AVM, if anything ever happens with a loan, you can always go back to the appraiser to answer the questions. In AVM, You need someone that's responsible.
And,
That's what I'm saying. And
that,
someone that's insured.
That overflows to errors and omissions insurance. You have to carry errors and omissions insurance.
Exactly. Yeah, to do mortgage finance transactions, to appraise a home. That's what I mean.
And how much do you have to carry insurance for?
I think the minimum is $1 million.
So you have $1 million policy on the reports that you do.
Yes.
I see. So in terms of the AVMs now, because I remember when I was working for a large company as a review appraiser, we were using AVMs, these automated value models, to help us with the review. But even in the review process, it still wasn't enough. You still needed a live person. So I think technology probably will never take that over, because we talked about some of the reasons why we inspect property, and one of them was that the property physically exists, because there's the opportunity there for fraud,
right,
and a facade, especially with AVMs and technology. I mean, with as simple few clicks, you can have some pictures of a property, and not have the actual physical information available.
Right.
And I also worked for a large company back then, and they did all their appraisals by AVMs. They had their automated system where they would just, I was doing loans at the time, and all we would do is we would punch it into the system, and if our value came back, then we were writing a loan. And that's probably why they got bought out by Bank of America.
That could very well could be. They were depending on a system that they thought was reliable, but turned out not to be. And this is the reason why the appraisal industry has continued to up the ante. We talked about increased education. We've talked about increased knowledge, increased amount of training. All of that stuff applies to the appraiser. And actually, which overflows, Alonso, to the question. We kind of got off on a rant there. You were asking about one of the things here on the outline. USPAP is Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, and I'm afraid that Pete's going to tell us, well, that's changed too.
Well, that's always changing. I mean, right now, like the main things is you need to mention the exposure time in the report, and of course, there's a 3-year rule whether or not you've appraised the home within the last 3 years. Just mention that.
Oh, so that's a requirement that you have. If you've appraised the house in the past 3 years, that's something you have to report on?
You need to put that in the report now, yes.
Wow.
And the exposure time. So, and the thing is, I mean, the softwares, they actually have use pages that are current with that as well. They put the minimum stuff in. If you want to go beyond that scope and put more stuff in, set your own disclosure if you want to.
Now I kind of wanted to mention a little bit, because that kind of overflows a little bit into the appraiser certification and limiting conditions on the report. All of that is in the appraisal report.
You know what, I wanted, okay. Yeah, go ahead, I'll let you finish. Because I was going to say, you asked me like originally what's the difference between what we do as an inspection when we go out to inspect the property. For instance, I did an FHA loan. The borrower called me and said, how did I give value to this property because there's no plumbing? The copper plumbing was stolen.
Oh.
Well, I don't check that. I know I put in the report that the water was not running,
Oh.
So I put that I don't know that the plumbing was stolen. I have no idea to what extent. That's a limiting condition because we do not check that in the inspection. It's just based on the data that we have available and based on the report that we're creating.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to point out that when you actually get an appraisal report, all of the things that an appraiser is supposed to be doing and will be doing is actually written verbatim on the report itself.
Right.
So a lot of times,
no one reads that.
Well,
no one just looks at the value and that's it.
Yeah, nobody reads that stuff. And the funny thing is that they'll call and complain about like what you just said right now about the plumbing. Okay, how can you give a value to this property? It doesn't have any plumbing. And then you point it out to them where it says it on the appraisal. Well, it's number 6 on the limiting conditions.
Right.
They almost feel
and
insulted.
I comment it doesn't meet the standards because the plumbing doesn't work. I don't know why it doesn't work, but it doesn't. So.
And see there comes another point that comes across. That's why it's very important that if a real estate agent knows that material fact, then is he allowed to tell the appraiser? Would it affect the value? If I were to tell you, Pete, by the way, it doesn't have plumbing.
Well,
there's no plumbing in it.
Call a plumber. That's what I would say.
But what would that be in your sense?
I can answer that. I can answer that, Mr. Alonso. Yes, it would.
Now, have I influenced your appraisal?
Absolutely not, because what you've done is you've given us a material fact, and it's something that we report on because it has to do with the habitable living condition of the property. Okay. Also, health and safety. You need running water for it to be habitable. The property does need running water. So This is where now the appraiser has the option to do what's called an as-is appraiser versus a subject to appraisal. Okay, they would make the appraisal subject to those repairs, but the value would be the same, because what we're doing is we're making the property as if it was sellable. But if the appraiser doesn't know that's in the limiting conditions or in the appraisal, in the body of the appraisal, it says if the appraiser doesn't know, there's no way that they can give it that consideration. So I just wanted to expand a little bit on that, Pete, because that's I'll tell you what, like we talked about earlier, nobody reads that stuff.
Right.
You know, they're looking at the value.
There's appraisers that don't read that stuff in their reports.
You know, when I was training appraisers, I would ask them, because now the form is different, but it used to be called the 439, and I would ask them, hey, have you read the 439? It was one page. What's the 439? They wouldn't even know what it was. That was nuts. It was. But we talked about USPAP.
Oh, yeah, but USPAP too, you're required to take USPAP every 2 years because it does change continuously, so they want to keep you up to par. But
what is USPAP, Pete?
Well, it's basically, believe it or not, USPAP is actually for what I've learned in class, it covers actually all types of appraisals. In real estate, oh, damn, I should have studied this before. We don't, because I think we don't need to know like every chapter. Like only certain parts of USPAP really pertain to real estate appraisers. And of course, I don't remember what chapters those are. So
Well, USPAP really pertains to our code of conduct.
Exactly.
You know, how we conduct our business, and it involves appraisal management. It involves the way that we research property, and it creates a standard for how we report on those things.
Right.
And if I recall, this USPAP didn't come into effect until like in the mid 2000s, because I remember I was taking my my appraisal classes, and all of a sudden they go, oh, by the way, now you got to take this extra USPAP now course.
Well, USPAP actually was designed by the Appraisal Institute, and
Exactly,
it was actually in the mid 90s.
Yeah, I was going to say mid-90s.
But it didn't actually become more prevalent in licensing until early 2000s.
Yeah, exactly. Because I remember that was an extra curriculum that you had to do in order to become an appraisal.
Well, thanks for joining us, Pete. Actually, there was a lot more that we would have liked to discuss on the show, and we're coming up at the end of the show. Thanks for joining us, listeners.
Thanks for having me
here at the Rant Radio Network.
It was a pleasure. Very informative show, I believe.
It was. It was a good show, and if we can invite you back another time, we'd like to continue the discussion on appraisal.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, Alonzo. Good to meet you too.
Likewise.
Okay. Thanks for listening. You can email us at realestaterantradio@gmail.com. I hope he does the disclaimer.
Thanks for tuning in to Real Estate Rant Radio.
Make sure to join us every Wednesday at 10 a.m.
on the Rant Radio Network, where we talk about solutions to your real estate problems.